Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Mission Matters Money Podcast, your source for all things money. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres. Keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, so today is a very special episode. Today we're talking to Sean Coyle, who just became an Amazon #1 bestseller for the new release sections. He was featured in our most recent release of the Business Leaders edition of Money Matters. Sean, welcome to the show.
Adam, thank you for having me.
Man, I'm so excited to have you back. It was so fun to work on that project with you, and it was an honor to publish your work. And we're going to get into that. So from $600 and a dream to 1,600 apartments. But first, before we go into the book, I want to get a little bit further into what you're doing as principal and owner over at SNC Investment Partners. Tell us a little bit more about your company, please.
All right. We are a real estate syndication company. We find deals, underwrite deals, do all the heavy lifting, and we bring investors in to partner with us on our acquisitions. And they are completely passive, and we do all the work. And we've been operating there for 7 years, and we've grown the business essentially from our first deal, which was 3 apartments in New York, up to about 1,650 apartments right now.
Man, I'll tell you. So your chapter in the book, you had me fired up. I'm like, I want to buy real estate. I want to get properties. I was really like, I love it. You had me all fired up when I read it. I'm like, I haven't had that bug in a while, but you definitely put it back. So let's just start from we're not going to have time today to get into the entire everything. And by the way, audience, if we did have time, we still wouldn't be doing it because we want you to go out there and buy the book. You see that little trick we do there? But that being said, I do want you to kind of start with the beginning in your chapter and how you got started in real estate, please.
Sure. I've been working in construction since I was like 14. Whenever there was no school, so say there was weekends or holiday or summer holidays, from the ages of 14 onwards, I was working on a job site, pouring concrete, working in concrete houses. And from there, I used that to put myself through university. Started again at my university. I think I had classes 3 days a week, so 2 days a week whenever I wasn't in class, I was working, and then every weekend as well. And I got to learn, the trades, who was doing what, why they were doing it a certain way, how certain systems worked in buildings, and how they worked, in conjunction with one another. And then finished my degree on a Friday. I was on the first flight back to America on that Saturday morning. Got a job. Got brought out to play Gaelic football with a team in New York, and they said they promised me a job. I came. They kept good in their word, and I started working on Monday. So on a job site doing concrete. I had a good friend, Chris Green, who put me up on his couch for 2 weeks till I got on my feet. And from there, just started with learning how to do things slightly differently in America with regards to construction, and use that knowledge and kind of seen how I could use that there with relation to real estate. So I was all into buying fixer-uppers, and I wanted to get into buying fixer-uppers, and that's where I started with. I bought my first property, was a triplex in the South Bronx, and it was a weird property. The guy who bought it before me, he bought it for $678,000, I think, and I ended up picking it up for $363,000. When I bought it, I had to renovate 2 of the apartments. One of the apartments had footprints on the ceiling. I have no idea how that happened, but there was. But yeah, and it just kind of snowballed from there. First one went well. It was all about cash flow, making sure that there was enough cash flow every month to cover all the bills, and I was happy. So that one turned out very productive, and I said, one of the themes in your chapter that I just noticed, and it's kind of through the whole thing, is that you're not scared to work hard. So a lot of times they'll say, how do I raise money? How do I do this? How do I do that? And I grew up working. I was
working in construction and things like that since I was a teenager. So I never really understood that. It's like, well, how do you get money? You work. You don't take weekends off and you save money. One of the lines that I read in your chapter that just made me laugh was it says, back to NYC. Once I had a job, I worked like an animal. I party like one too, truth be told, picking up as many hours as I could. And I was working upwards of 60 to 80 hours per week, trying to save as much money as I could to buy my first property in New York. I mean, what is hard work and just the not being scared to go out there and put in the elbow grease? What has that meant in your life?
Doing what the next guy won't, basically, or maybe not next guy, but next person, or whatever we want to be politically correct here.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, do what the next person won't. Whenever I was working on a project in New York, there was like fire watch at night where there was water in the plumbing pipes, but there was no heat in the building, so we needed somebody to come in at night, stay there with the heat on to make sure the pipes didn't bust.
Wow.
So I would do that for 8 hours at night, and then I would do my 8-hour shift during the day as well. So I was working 16-hour days sometimes, and working if I get a couple of hours on Saturday and Sunday, I was doing that as well. But that was just to get money saved up, but then there's no point having money if you don't know what to do with it. So like every day going to work on the train commuting from like Lower Westchester or the Bronx into work, I was reading on the train, reading books about how to get started, where to get started, what to look for, what are the pitfalls, what to avoid, like the plague, and basically how do you get your first deal going. And that's what I did, man. I was always reading books. I was listening to podcasts, listening to audiobooks, whatever I could do. I was even reading at lunchtime sometimes on the job site. Again, I was getting weird looks from the other construction workers, but I didn't care. I kind of knew what I was working towards and what I wanted to achieve, so it didn't bother me.
Let's talk about, when you finally made that move and you decided, North Carolina was the place. What were some of the things that kind of inspired that move?
I had the tenant from Nightmare. She was the Nightmare from Hell. She was she knew every trick in the book about how to get out of evicting. She was a seasoned professional person that you just evicted all the time.
Wow.
She made my life hell. She would punch holes in the walls and call the city on me, report me for a violation, even though she did the hole in the wall. She would we call it rip the kitchen cabinet doors off the kitchen cabinets and say that there was never any there to start off with. She would break all the smoke detectors and report me for not being up to fire standard regulations. She would. There was one time she actually shot. She had her boyfriend or her had a gun, and they shot through the window. And then they reported me for, I don't know how they reported me, but they reported me for, we called them gun violence, and I wasn't even in the country. I was like, how can I prevent somebody from shooting into your house? And I was, but anyway, she took 14 months to evict, and she was the driving factor for me getting out of New York. I needed to get away from that. That was just like too much negativity in my life, and it was putting a real damper on my whole buzz with wanting to get bigger. So I started looking for states that were a lot more landlord friendly. And one of the first ones that I liked, because we had friends that lived in North Carolina, was that market. So I started looking at developing markets, cities that were growing with their population, where jobs were moving to, and one of the cities that popped up was Winston-Salem, and that's where I bought my first property. It was a smaller 16-unit building, and I kind of used myself as a guinea pig to make sure that it would work going out of state first, because I was still living in New York. Mm-hmm. And I did that to make sure that it would be a success before I started doing it full time and bringing investor money in. Before I did that, so yeah, it worked out well, and it kind of just snowballed from there.
Man, as much as you hate to say it, it's like she did you a favor in retrospect. I mean, and we never look at it that way, right? That was not a good experience, but it's like if it wasn't for that lady, you wouldn't have found North Carolina, right? Or possibly not.
That's 100% true.
Oh, but it still hurts, and I'm so sorry you went through that. It's terrible. Every single person out there that's listening to this right now, a lot of real estate investors listening, they're either in their car or they're at work and they're cringing. They're like, oh, I had one of those.
Yeah, everybody has one.
Oh man, that's awesome. So I'm glad it all worked out. But so that being said, Sean, if I could talk to you about this all day long, but first off, just want to congratulate you again. It was an honor to publish your work and your story. I know you're going to inspire a lot of people with it. Again, from $600 in a dream to 1,600 apartments, amazing accomplishment. That being said, Sean, if somebody's listening to this and they want to learn more about SNC Investment Partners or to connect, I mean, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Sure. Just go to my website, sncinvestmentpartners.com, and there's a contact us link, and it'll send us a message if you ever want to get in contact.
Fantastic. Well, hey, thanks again for coming on the show. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave me a review, do all those great things we do to support our podcasters. I really do appreciate it. And Sean, thanks again for coming back on the show.